Hello, 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 and welcome back to the next episode of the Shane Walsh podcast. So, this topic is something that I think we've all struggled with. I think it's kind of when we are seeing changes on the weighing scales or seeing changes in measurements and we're still not happy with them. It can feel like that impatience noise kind of comes into your head, and a lot of people who are even losing weight and are losing measurements will try to slash their calories further, even though things are working because they have impatience. And I think one of the big sentences I like to say to some clients is if you're not happy with 1 kg down, you're not going to be happy with 2 kg down. Sometimes it's about giving yourself credit for what you've done so far. If the weight is going down, dropping calories is about as useful as a glass hammer. Why change something that's working? Why change something that's working other than just impatience? And impatience is a one way to go nowhere fast. Now there are people, and there is research that people need quicker results and quicker weight loss in order to get some adherence. Completely get that. That's why sometimes the drugs can be a great idea to get some people that momentum, that the belief that they can do it. And outside of the drugs, there are studies to show that. But there's no point in losing 10 pounds and then putting 11 pounds back on, which I think an awful lot of people, because I've been there, that's the way that they feel about things. And I think we need to look at it from a place of the difference between weight loss and fat loss in that trap. Because most people can, through no fault of their own, they get this a little bit twisted. Weight loss and fat loss are not the same thing, just like muscle and fat are not the same thing. They're two different entities in the body. Muscle doesn't turn into fat, etc. And understanding this difference is key, to not screwing yourself over. Weight loss is what the scales measures. It doesn't measure your self-worth. It doesn't measure how good, nice a human you are. It doesn't measure fat loss at all. It measures gravity. But it can also, if I drank this bottle of water here, the scales will go up, but I've done nothing other than drink water. There could also be, on the scales, it can go up and down due to stages of your menstrual cycle. It could be down to a little bit more water, a little bit more salt, a meal later in the evening, not going to the bathroom, etc. So the scales doesn't discriminate. It just measures a lot of things, but can't measure fat loss. Okay. Now, fat loss is, when I talk about non-scale victories with an awful lot of my clients, it's coming from a place of the measurements. So I may get my clients to measure their thighs, their biggest part of their glutes, their hips, their belly button, their bust along the nipple line, and then on their arms. And measuring this will indicate fat loss, and fat loss will show the body composition, or whether you're getting leaner or you're getting stronger. You start to see those muscles, etc. And that's the stuff that we want to lose for health. And that changes how you look, how your clothes fit, how you feel overall. But when you drop calories too aggressively or too soon, sure, the scales will move, but what are you actually losing? You could be losing more muscle than needed. So that's why, if you look at with the weight loss drugs, yes, the scales are going down for an awful lot of people. And for an awful lot of people, that's what they're looking for. But there's also this risk of losing an awful lot of muscle. And if we lose an awful lot of weight too quickly and we lose muscle, it can be a negative thing. Because if you got into your 40s or your 50s and your 60s and you haven't got a whole lot of muscle and you fell, particularly for women, you could be at the risk of osteoporosis, osteopenia, sarcopenia. And if you had a fall, you could break your bones easier. And an awful lot of people who are in their 50s and 60s, particularly women, when they have a fall, some women can ultimately pass away from those injuries. Now, this is not a fear-mongering or scaremongering. I'm just providing context. But if you drop your calories too quickly when things are working, you could lose muscle. You could increase binge eating, and then you'll beat yourself up for it and binge harder, and then beat yourself up for it again, and then you'll stop. Or the weight might be going lower, and you've just made this process harder on yourself. Because it should be the last resort. I'm going to give you a kind of a little bit of a picture. You're in a deficit. So if you're in a deficit, the scales is dropping, measurements are coming down, you're losing fat. Everything's going the way you want, and then someone tells you, hey, you should probably eat less to speed this up. Or you've got events coming up and you're getting triggered by body image and not feeling comfortable, and you're kind of like, do you know what, I need to go faster at this. I've got this so far with doing so well so far. Imagine if I went faster. But you've done faster before and it hasn't worked. Faster weight loss doesn't mean success. Can it work for some? Yeah, it can. But the majority of people that I work with and have the pleasure of working with on a daily basis, it doesn't work very well for long term. So one thing that a lot of people forget is that adherence could go out the window. The more aggressive your deficit, the harder it is to stick to. It's not a willpower issue. You're hungry, you're more miserable, you're more tired, you're thinking about food constantly. And then ultimately you just hit it on a Friday and you're like, oh, I deserve this. Then before you know it, your head's in a bucket of KFC and you don't know what time of the day it is. But the fuck it button is pressed and you beat yourself up for it. It gets really sensitive when you're under eating. This kind of beating yourself up approach. It's Friday night, you're white knuckling it all week, 1,200 calories, 1,300 calories, then suddenly you find yourself elbow deep in crisps. And then that's not a lack of discipline. That's your body telling yourself that you're undernourished all week and you haven't given yourself enough energy. So rather than trying to cut your calories and making yourself more miserable, because ultimately you may have decided or predetermined the outcome before you even start going to lose weight. You may are maybe going off every other attempt that you've gone by and said, well, I failed, so I'm a failure, or I'm all or nothing, or I'm a yo-yo diet, or I'm an emotional eater. And as soon as anything that backs up that narrative comes across, you say to yourself, I told you so. Or you set a deadline, if I don't lose 2 pounds of weight tomorrow morning, I'm going to give up. And that is a lot more common than you think. And this isn't me judging you, I'm just saying what I have heard. And what can happen for an awful lot of people is they know events are kind of coming up now because life is happening again. January was a bit grim, weather was a bit shit, etc. But a lot of people are freaking out because they've got events coming up and life is creeping back up. That's why the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks are generally a lot easier for people in January, because life isn't really at play. You haven't got your meals out, your nights out, you're drinking, your friends, whatever it might be, your weekends away or whatever it might be. But when it comes to February, a lot of people struggle because they haven't got the skill set through no fault of their own that they need to change the tack and they need to incorporate these things and learn tactics of how to have a life. So making it harder and going white knuckling on lower calories isn't going to work. Second reason lowering your calories makes everything harder: your workout suffer, your recovery suffer, your sleep suffers, your mood suffers, your partner suffers, your kids suffer, your sleep suffers, your social life takes a hit because you've got about as much energy. You've got so little energy. And for what? To lose weight slightly faster. I remember when I did my fitness photo shoot in 2018, I lost 10 kg in 12 weeks. That was crash dieting and that was silliness personified. I wouldn't do it again and wouldn't advise it. So I have probably a bias, and it's probably my own bias. I didn't think I had that amount of weight to lose or could lose that weight, but I did. But I also put it back on. But I needed, my brain was thinking about food all the time. I had so little energy. I was working 5:30 to 9 p.m. in the evening, so no social life. Was literally so thirsty and so irritable, etc. And the irony is that a lot of people think, right, lose weight faster, be happier. Unlikely. You'll probably beat yourself up more and make the journey longer because you're not able to adhere to it. And that's not a challenge. That's not go and do it or whatever it might be. But your body, there's a thing called homeostasis, which means balance. And if it doesn't feel safe and your body doesn't feel balanced, it'll kind of revolt against it. So if you're giving yourself 1,200 calories, which is the dietary requirement of a 4-year-old girl, your brain's going to go, hang on, we can't have this. Now we can have this. We don't know when this is going to happen again. Let's have it all. It's essentially what a lot of happens to an awful lot of people. Reason 3 is your weekends become an even bigger struggle. So if you're already struggling to stay on track, shall we say, I hate that term, during the weekends, dropping calories is going to make this harder for you. It's like throwing gasoline onto a fire. Monday through Friday, you're operating on fumes, you're irritable, you're hungry, you're fantasizing about food, then Saturday hits, and it's like a dam that breaks. You're not just eating for you're eating like it's a full-time job. You've been so restrictive or good all week, and please do not confuse being good with actually going well. Being good essentially means being restrictive. Do not confuse the two. The two mean restriction. And bad means you're a shit human being for doing it. That's essentially what we can feel that we are. And your brain goes into rebellion mode. You go into shame mode. You beat yourself up for not being able to stick to it. And then we're back to square one. And then you spend Sunday night feeling guilty, poking at yourself, looking in the mirror, poking at fat, promising yourself you'll be better next week, and then you drop calories even more because you think that's the solution. Make life harder. Because it's a vicious cycle that's completely preventable. I would say one of the only times that you should be lowering your calories is probably way later than you think into the process. And it doesn't always land with people. I think some people need to be ready to hear it versus are ready to hear it. If your measurements, which is your fat loss and your weight, hasn't changed for 2 weeks and you've been at least 80 to 90% adherent, that's the key point. Have you been adherent? And things haven't changed for 2 to 3 weeks and cycle and all that kind of stuff hasn't taken into it, then maybe drop by 100, 150 calories. But doing that before that is making your life harder. It's like taking a wheel off your car and thinking it's going to survive on 3 wheels. It's essentially what a lot of people will try to do. So if you're only being 50 or 60% adherent and you're giving out about your changes and your results and you think lowering your calories is going to go well, it's like thinking sticking a hole into your condom before you have sex is going to go well. 80%. This means hitting your targets 5 or 6 out of the days out of 7. Looking at your weekly calorie average, are you within your weekly calorie budget? You're not having binge episodes. You're not having massive blowouts. You're not skipping meals and then binging. You're actually doing what you want. You're acting like the person you want to become. Because if you're not hitting 80%, you don't have a calorie problem. You have a consistency problem. And a bigger deficit is not going to increase consistency. It's going to make it worse. So, what should you do if the weight is still going down? Simple, keep going. It could be that self-sabotage voice in your head saying, I don't deserve this. This isn't going down quick enough. I'm going to exit the building. But it's working. It may not be spectacular, and fat loss isn't spectacular if it's done the right way. The longer you can stay at higher calories, the longer you'll feel okay. And it should be only about a 12 to 16 week deficit, I would say, before someone needs almost a mental break from trying to diet. If you're trying to diet all the time, something's not right. But 12 to 16 weeks is generally the point where it's kind of like, you know what, bang on. Probably need to maintain here. But maintenance isn't sexy. Imagine I sold a female maintenance program. Like, people are like, what the hell is that? But If it stalls for whatever reason and you've been 80% adherent, then reduce it by 50 to 100, 150 calories. But don't make it harder for yourself. Fat loss is harder enough with the emotional side and all that kind of stuff. But think of your calorie budget like money. You don't want to spend it all at once at the beginning of your fat loss phase and blow your load, because you've nowhere else to drop it. So if you're thinking about going from 1,800 to 2,000 calories, things are ticking along and you've lost 5 pounds in 2 or 3 weeks, you don't need to change anything. As long as you're going down weight loss or measurements, you don't need to change shit. You don't need to change shit. It's like when you start to save money and then you blow it all on some extravagant expense, like a new pair of shoes, and you're back to square one. That's not helpful for your saving for your ultimate goal of buying a house. And that might not be a great example, but it makes sense in my head. Look, I get it. We all want a quick fix, but quick fixes are fucking pointless. We like the idea of them, but we don't like the idea of being patient. We don't like that idea. Patient isn't a virtue many have when it comes to this. But trust me, those of you who see the best transformations through all the transformations that I put out there, who keep the weight off, who have a decent relationship with food, are the ones who play the longer game. They prioritize nourishment. They prioritize adherence. They understand the difference between weight loss and fat loss. So if you're in a deficit right now, and if this is really going to be hitting home for an awful lot of you, because people will start to freak out now with life ramping up. And I've got 3 trips coming up in the next 4 weeks that are away. I won't be really changing anything. Just nourishing myself, focusing on that. Now, my goal is different. I've got a strength goal. So I need a little bit more food in order to improve that strength goal. But I'm not increasing it by loads. It's a little bit more on my snack in the afternoon, and that's about it. So if you're in that mindset of I need to drop my calories because the scales isn't going down quick enough, I want you to slap yourself in the face. I'm joking. No, but seriously, slap yourself in the face. But no, what you need to do is you need to take a big deep breath in. And I'm not going to say trust the process. What I'm going to say is do not drop your calories. You should not be losing weight faster. You're going in the direction you've always wanted. What's coming up now is this fear of, if I lose the weight, who am I? I may not be the fat friend anymore. Who am I without this weight? Do I deserve this? What if I lost the weight? If this episode has helped you in any shape or form, please let us know. Share it with a friend, someone who needs to hear it. Remember, consistency beats intensity every single time. Going quicker with your weight loss and being impatient doesn't work anytime. If you are interested in working with me on a one-to-one capacity, I have 2 spots available for February. Click a link on the show notes and we can have a free consultation. So thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. If you have any questions at all, please let us know. But thank you so much for listening to today's podcast.